Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Gargoyles Quest, brought to us by Capcom. Gargoyles Quest is actually a spin-off of the Ghost and Goblin series, with the main character of Firebrand being the same type of creature, or maybe even supposed to be the same creature, as those red demon gargoyle-like creatures that are in the Ghost and Goblins games, which are one of the more annoying and difficult enemies to beat in that game. In Gargoyles Quest, you're playing as Firebrand, and you're traveling throughout the ghoul realm, and there is a lot of stuff going on, some evil forces at play, and your goal is to explore the world. It's kind of an RPG in some ways, where you get to travel around a world map. There's actually random encounters, and even towns for you to visit and people to talk to. The game's core main action, though, is a more traditional 2D action game, but you actually have some unique powers, especially considering playing as Firebrand. You have the ability to fly. You can only fly for a short amount of time at first, but that does get upgraded along with a few other things as the game progresses. So here we go with Gargoyles Quest on the Game Boy. After the opening scene, we get control of Firebrand. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen you have 2 meters. One is L, which is your health, represented by the circles, and then you also have the W, which is your flying ability, or your wings ability, and you can see that quickly depletes anytime we end up flying. Basically, to fly at any point, you jump into the air, and then you hit the jump button again while you're in the air still, in order to initiate the flying. You can only, of course, fly straight, left, and right, but it's still a really cool feature. The other really cool part about the gameplay is being able to attach yourself to walls, which of course is a key proponent of being able to do a lot of the game's platforming. Things can very easily take you out, especially early on with only a little bit of health at your disposal. To the left here you can find an extra bit of health if you want to grab that heart, but our goal is to continue working our way through these ghosts and other enemies while making our way over to the right here. These platforms will fall as soon as you land on them, so you may only want to do so for just a second or so you can regain that wing power before taking off again. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult, especially when going up a tree or something like this, and there's something right at the very top of it waiting for you, especially with limited wing power to kind of fly away and then try to retract in order to take it out. Be careful of all the spikes lining the ceiling and floor, making it through this tight corridor before dropping on down here. There are spikes waiting at the bottom, thankfully also health, so you can get that health back. Now it's time for the first boss encounter of the game, which is a giant fish-like creature. Start off by waiting for him to kind of show himself and then deliver a few hits here before trying to immediately get away once he comes towards you. Because of how big everything is, it can be a bit difficult at times in order to get away quickly, so you may have to sacrifice not hitting him as much in order to be able to kind of get away. He'll fly towards you. The game usually slows up a bit because it just ends up being so much on screen, especially when he fires out some projectiles of his own. It won't take too many hits before he drops, and once he does, wait for a few seconds, the ground will kind of build up around you, and then you'll be able to head to the door that's located on the right side and head on out of here. Now, on the world map, you do have random encounters. Now, one way I've found to avoid some of them is by slowly moving your character. Instead of consistently just holding the direction that you want to move, I usually go one press and then the next one and continue on with a nice little rhythm to it. And I find that I end up missing more encounters this way. I don't know if it's true or not, but by doing it, and many times I've played through the game, I've found I've run into far less encounters than if I just hold down the D-pad. The extra random encounters are actually very similar to this one that we're forced to do, where you're basically in a small arena-like setting, have to take out all of the current enemies on screen, and once you do, you then go back to the map. Now, you do get vials for completing this, as well as you will find vials spread throughout all of the levels and such. The vials work as the game's money. You can actually go to some of the towns and use the vials to buy extra lives in the game. Every time you buy an extra life, though, the cost of buying another one ends up going up, and it can actually reach, I think, a maximum of 64 vials per extra life if you buy a lot of them. Here we're going to stop by the first town, walk in, and talk to the big guy waiting in the throne named Jark. After talking to Jark, head on back out of the town, and once you're back onto the main map, head north this time. Once again, I'm going to do my little bit of short walking. Eventually, you'll come to a bridge for a forced encounter. Here, we have to work our way across this bridge, and get used to it because you actually have to go across this bridge several times throughout the course of the gameplay. It's a relatively simple area. There are fire that you'll have to watch out for, especially big fire towers coming out of the fire below. But for the most part, it's pretty simple to kind of move across, land every so often when you need to in order to regain that wing power before taking off again and flying. This is one of those moments, though, that you just get to kind of enjoy that whole flying mechanic, which is one of the reasons why I ended up liking this game so much. Here, unfortunately, I do run into a random encounter. Like I said, it seems to help a bit, but I still run into a few encounters here and there during a normal playthrough. Pretty simple, though, to, of course, take out the enemies as I'm battling them here, and then we're back onto the world map. Every time you do one of these encounters, like I said, you will end up netting yourself an extra vial. Now, work your way across the map and on down here, and eventually, as we work our way around, you'll see that tower just to the right. That's where we're going to be heading, so head up here and head into the tower. Now, this is kind of like the second main level of the game. Start off by jumping up here, taking out the masked ghost guys, and then head over to the right. There's a vial waiting here as well as a tree. Take out the tree, and when you do, it will explode into a multiple spread shot that will kind of go out, so be sure to be in between the bullets so that you're able to dodge it. Also, in here is jumping flying eyeballs and some nasty-looking bug creatures. These things are a little bit creepy, not like the creepiest of sprite-based bugs, but they definitely have a very grotesque insect appearance. Well, at least for someone who doesn't really like insects all that much. Climb up here and watch out for the trees as best as possible and work your way up the walls. You can take out the trees, but remember, if you hit them, they will do that 3-shot spread shot, so sometimes it's best to just avoid accidentally running into them or doing damage to them. Work your way up here. You have these moving kind of pillars back and forth. Ride the one on the bottom over and then jump off of it as it's coming back towards the left side so you can hit the other pillar from the opposite side, and this will allow you to avoid the spikes and then work your way up the large wall here. Once you are up here, head on down a little bit and you'll find another one of those towers. Get on either side of it, or you can just kind of stand on it and work your way over, watching out for one of the Venus flytrap-like enemies. A few hits before it's able to spawn a creature is best, but sometimes it's unavoidable. As soon as it comes on screen, you basically have a couple of seconds to deal with it before it ends up spawning one of those things. Either way, keep working your way up from the kind of little pillar towers to pillar and work your way up here to the boss chamber. The boss for this area, though, is 4 eyeballs that are attached to the 4 corners. Get into the boss fight and start off, we're going to go over here to the left side and take out the first one. Do a little hover right in front of it in order to do damage to it so that you're able to hit enough of the hits before your wing power runs out. If you're really quick on the draw, you can take him out before you end up losing that bit of wing power you have, but either way you may have to drop down and then jump back up. It does fire out projectiles at you, so you have to be careful, especially with low health. This can be a little bit challenging. Make sure that you accidentally also don't fall into the spikes at points when you're trying to maneuver around. You can stand here on this left little island and use that to kind of jump towards this final one, but be sure to run out of the way anytime he ends up firing projectiles at you. After delivering the final hits, head on over to the left. There's now an opening in the wall to the left, and once you get outside, you will find out you have acquired the Gremlin Stick, which is what we needed in order to give back to that guy we talked to a little bit ago, which is now where we have to head back to. Because of the translation, the big text font that they ended up using so that you'll be able to read it on a small Game Boy screen, it seems like there's a lot of sentences, but in reality there's only a handful of words that end up getting said at most text encounters, but because that font's so big you have to go through multiple little scrolling segments of it. Work your way back to that bridge that we crossed, and now you're going to be going the opposite way through this and heading back to that town where we met that guy Jark. Once again, it's the same area as before. Just try to do your best not to fall into the lava or get hit by the fire, and just use your wing ability to the best of your ability. Once you make it back to the village, just head back to where Jark is and talk to him again, and afterwards we'll be heading back to that bridge we just crossed before. After talking to Jark, we have our next destination that we're going to be needing to go to, and we're going to leave the town and head up to that bridge. Thankfully, this is the last time that we have to cross the bridge, though, during this gameplay. Same path, though, nothing changes on your times through this, so should be pretty used to it and have no issue being able to traverse it. After getting off the bridge, head on north. You'll come to a zombie guy who's kind of standing there hanging out, and there's a gate behind him, which is where our goal is. Talk to him first. After the conversation, you'll then be able to head through that gate. One of the cool things is we also get an increase to our armor, which in this game works as having more health. So now we have 3 health at the bottom of the screen, which will definitely help us out a bit. Unfortunately, we can't go up here. You actually have to drop it down into the water, watching out for the bone skeleton-like fish. They're going to try to attack you, and work your way on over here to the right, and take the exit at the bottom, which will take us back to the world map on the opposite end of that gate. Now head on over onto the world map over to the right, and you'll come to the next town. Once you're in the town, immediately leave. We don't have to do anything here. Instead, you just have to do that in order to kind of get above the town north. Head around this ghost guy here and talk to the tree, or look at the tree, check it, and you will find the next item that is needed. The item we ended up getting will allow us to, of course, fly for a longer period of time, which is needed in order to get over a gap that we're going to have to cross very soon. While working our way over to the left, unfortunately I do run into one of those battle sequences. It contains a couple of those Venus fly-like traps. Take them both out if you're able to do so before they end up spawning anything. It's very easy, but either way, if they do, you'll have to kill the things they spawn as well for you to get back to that world map. Once back here, continue on over to the left side. Go all the way until you run into kind of a dead end, and then head north. You'll see a town over to your left. Ignore that little town and continue head up to the right just a little bit. You'll find a ghost in the path. Here we'll have to do one of those random battles against these rather large enemies. They take many hits in order to take out. They have a detachable head that they end up throwing in order to do damage to you. They also can do a pretty hefty amount of damage. As you can see, they drain my health really quickly here. And even that little bit of increase of health really isn't all that useful when they're hitting you for as much as they are. Either way, take them both out, and once they are, you'll be back on the world map and then can head to the bridge located to the right. Now, on the bridge, we need to use the new flying ability that we got, aka we can fly for longer, and this will allow you to get over the rather large gap. You have to fly from pretty much the very edge and do a jump and then fly over to the right, because you'll just barely be able to attach yourself to the wall on the opposite side. Then continue on through the area, which is a relatively short but more difficult area than the bridge we had to deal with earlier. There's more fire, there's a bunch of pits, which will cause, of course, instant death, but it won't be too long before you're able to make it to that opposite side. Now head on over to the right just a little bit and then on down. taking our little bit of time in order to get over here, but like I said, I find that this ends up working a bit better than just kind of gunning it, as far as the random encounters go. Head on down, you will eventually come to the castle. You can walk on through this. We don't need to really talk to any of the other civilians here, but you can if you want to. And then head up north. This will lead us to another one of the action sequences. Start up by heading to the right. One of the blocks will fall immediately. You can kind of tell which ones are going to fall, but still be cautious when doing so. Usually these end up activating things around that will end up either coming towards you or some kind of trap. Head on up here, watch out for the fly trap-like enemy, and then we're going to kind of just fly across to the right. There's these frogs here that kind of hop around. They're pretty large, but pretty easy also to kind of take out. Fly up against this wall. This will end up causing this big giant rock to end up falling when you end up triggering it. Then continue your way up the wall, and when you make it to the top, the wind will start pushing you, as you can see. Continue to work your way, flying when you can in order to kind of avoid the spikes and safely land on these platforms. Now when you're doing this, one of these big giant skeleton guys will appear. Now of course you can fight him and take him out if you want to. Though, if you're a little bit quick on the draw, you can actually run on past him, quickly flying, getting over the platforms, and completely avoid having to deal with him whatsoever. There are some walls, like the weird-looking circle bubble-like ones, that you can't actually land and attach yourself to, so always be mindful of that. Keep heading to the right, though. Eventually you'll come to the boss. Land on this platform and keep firing at him until he ends up disappearing, in which case he'll also spawn a bunch of bugs that fly out at the four corners in diagonal directions. He'll also fire projectiles straight out, but if you're just slightly above him, like you can on the platforms I landed on, you can easily avoid taking any kind of damage from him. Just keep hitting him, and after 3, maybe 4 teleports, if you're a little bit slow on the attack, he will drop though, and you can go through the door at the end once it ends up allowing you to, and then talk to the guy at the throne. After the conversation, head on out of his throne room. You'll now be on the opposite side of the castle on the world map. Head north and you'll come to another town, which we're not going to do anything here. Instead, immediately leave the town. This will allow you to go over to the right side. Work your way around the mountains, whichever path you would like to take, and you'll find another town. Now later on we will need to come here and do stuff, but for now we're going to leave it and head into the desert on the right. Follow the path that I end up taking through the desert so that you're able to make it to kind of a crater here. You'll a lot of times be automatically forced to move in one direction, and because of this, you may end up running into random battles a little bit easier because you're kind of forced to move. I gained the other weapon a little bit earlier, and I hadn't really used it. I should probably have used it on that previous boss, so you may want to switch and use it on that last boss we had just fought. But because of the way it fires a little bit quicker than the normal weapon in the game, but whatever weapon you end up preferring. Like I said, follow the path that I do directly so that you're able to easily make it into that crater and begin the next segment. You can also see, because of the items and everything we've been getting, we now have an even bigger flying bar at our disposal to really help us navigate and fly through large areas. And we're going to need to in order to maneuver around quite a bit of heavy spikes, especially at the very beginning of this area. Drop on into here. This is another little water segment. There is a bunch of the skeleton bone fish trying to get us, but pretty easy to kind of maneuver around and get through. Over here to the right, take out this skeleton guy who will fire projectiles at you, and then jump up to his platform and do a A little bit of flying maneuvering once again around some stuff in order to drop down here. Once here, you can actually jump into the air and fly over an enemy or two while moving here and over to the left side. Here, you're going to have to use the new weapon that we got in order to destroy these walls. Like I said, you can't land on them, so make sure that you have enough flight in your arsenal so that you'll be able to get through. There's some health above here, but if you don't end up killing that weird plant-like guy, he will chase you for a while if you're not quick enough, so you may want to take him out if you get annoyed by him. Once over here, walk a little bit to the right, and now you have probably the toughest fight, at least in my opinion, because of how big this guy is, and he moves pretty quickly. Being able to dodge out of the way of this guy while also dealing with his projectiles can be a bit difficult. Even just jumping over him and making sure that you're able to clear him without him accidentally jumping up at you can be a challenge. Don't take any unnecessary risk at all possible while dealing with this guy. While the projectiles thankfully do move slow, his body can move pretty quick, and hit detection is, pretty solid here, where you'll get hit very easily if he ends up jumping at you if you're not able to get high enough above him. Once the boss does go down, though, you can head on through the door and head back out to the world map, and then we're going to head to that town that we passed while going towards the desert. Once in the town, head north, and to the left you'll see a guy blocking a doorway. Talk to him and you'll actually have to do battle with him before we'll have access to the house that he's guarding. Now you'll notice that this guy is very similar to us in his fighting style. We're going to switch to our new weapon, though its main purpose isn't necessarily attacking with it. Though it's a very easy fight, we can just fly in the air, blast him a few times, drop, immediately when he passes us, fly up again, wait, blast him a few more times, and he'll go down and no problem. The weapon itself, though, the main use for it, though, is being able to actually fire at walls when they have, like, spikes on them, and actually being able to kind of make a landable spot for you to do, so you can land, regain your wing power, and then actually be able to work your way up instead of landing, of course, and hurting yourself on the spikes on it. And we'll have to do a bit of that for the remainder of the game. Once he's defeated, though, head inside and talk to the guy at the throne. After talking to the guy, the secret passage is open, and we can go up above and head on through here and work your way all the way through the maze-like thing up into the upper left corner, and we'll be back on the world map at another location now. From here, start heading south. You'll have to work your way a little bit around the mountain, and eventually you'll come to this ghost guy. You will have to deal with him before being able to move on. Now, the encounter for this is one of those big guys with a throwable head that we've dealt with already once before, so it shouldn't be any problem to take him out, especially with the slightly better firing weapon, or at least can sometimes be a little bit better. Either way, whatever weapon is your choice, use it, easily knock both of these guys down, and once you have defeated the guy, head south through the opening now, and when you do so, you will be able to come to another one of those crater-like things, and this will take us to another little area. Once the area begins, you can just fly over a couple of these shielded guys and drop on down. You'll have to go kind of back and forth left and right a bit. There is some fly enemies and the other ghost guys that are kind of hanging around, and watch out for those. Drop on down here, watching out for the spikes on the right wall. When you make it to the bottom, there's some flames moving back and forth on the little individual platforms, but your goal is to work over and then kind of jump up here just a bit and go through the small opening, which will take you here. After talking to the guy, walk on down to this platform and hit the Use option in your menu. Once you end up having control of your character again, another little guy will appear in the room, and he'll also disappear to a couple of locations. Walk around the room and keep talking to him. Once the lights kind of come back on, head on up and talk to the other guy located here. Now you will have to do a battle against the guy. Once the battle begins, fly over him and attack him from behind. This is the only way to attack him. Do that for both of these kind of chariot-like devices that these monsters are riding. Once they're both defeated, you'll be back on the screen and talk to the guy we've talked to a few times already in this area. Once that conversation is finally over, you can head on out and you'll see a bridge just to the right and a little bit down from where you came out of that area, and of course that's where we're going to be heading to next. Work your way on flying and head on over here, watching out for the fire. Thankfully, you should have enough wing power to get you through. Be careful though, because of course these platforms will fall when you land on them. Very easy to fall down into the pit below. Keep on flying, watching out for the fire little guys on some of the platforms as you're making your way over. Drop on down, maneuvering your way. Make sure you hit fly at the right time so you can kind of get underneath this column sticking down, and you should be able to get through this area. Now, once you're back on the world map, start on heading south. You'll notice a town right below you, but we're not going to be worrying about that. In fact, head to the right, walking around the mountain, and just keep on going right. When you make it to the wall, head north, and you'll see a couple of gates, but the one you want is the one just above the first one that you end up seeing. Once you're in here, drop straight on down. You'll have some spikes on the left and right walls. Eventually, you'll have to start flying though, as you may accidentally land on spikes if you just let it go for too long. But either way, you have to kind of work and maneuver your way around a bunch of these spikes. Here's where we'll have to use our ability for the first time to kind of use the projectiles to make attachable pieces to the wall so that we can safely ascend using the spikes. Keep maneuvering your way up to the very top, and eventually you'll be able to pop out the other side, and now you'll come to a very large castle. Inside, talk to, well, the only guy who's here. As the area begins, you'll notice one of those frog demon creatures right near the beginning. He'll immediately try to jump towards you, but a nicely timed hit, because the projectile is pretty large actually, and ends up hitting a pretty good amount of an enemy anytime it's fired. So usually I don't end up missing too many shots when it comes to this game. Work your way on down here, fly along the spikes, taking out more frog dudes. It's easier to take them out than try to just fly over them, because there is that occasion where they will jump. The drill coming out of here and out of the other parts of the wall here is a bit annoying to avoid. I usually end up getting hit by all of them. So when I ended up getting hit, I usually just fall immediately and then just kind of get past that area as quick as I can. Thankfully, as long as you don't get hit by the spikes and the kind of columns here that you have to climb up, you can easily grab a large heart at the top and replenish one of the hits you may have ended up taking during this segment thus far. Work on down here and then fly across to the right. There's a lot of flames, a lot of enemies. The game will slow down a bit. hit the wall with one of the projectiles to form a safe spot to jump on, and then do the same after avoiding one of those skeleton projectile guys. Now here, another drill is coming out of the wall, but easier to avoid because you have a bigger space. We're going to come up here, though we don't have to, but the reason why is I'm going to fly over this guy without dealing with him. I can grab a heart, and then quickly kind of fly away around him again, while he's trying to throw his head usually out at me. This way I can get some of that health back, so I have 3 health instead of just having those 2, and this way I avoid dying if I get hit by one single enemy. Now we're going to work our way through a little bit of the path, watching out, trying to at least, this drill, and continuing down. Fly across over to the right, watch out for the rocks or pieces of the ceiling that are kind of falling down as you work your way up the ramp. Best just to kind of run up the ramp instead of trying to like fly up the ramp, as you'll just end up usually getting hit when you jump into the air. Climb up here briefly just to grab more health, so now we have full health, and then descend down. Be sure to equip the boomerang-like weapon so that you can actually destroy the rocks that are located here. Do the same on the next set of rocks that's located just to the right. Now, you'll be in the chamber with the boss encounter. Work your way over to the right side. I usually kind of get on here and then start firing at him. When he sticks both hands up in the air, or if he's blocking whatever side you're on, you won't be able to hurt him. Just kind of maneuver your way around, watching out for projectiles. Some will actually chase you down during this fight, and wait for those right opportunities on far left and far right sides of the room to fire at him. It takes a good amount of hits, but once you're able to deliver that final hit, we're actually nearing the very end of the game already. Now, once he is gone, when we head back onto the world map, just above this area is another one of those bridge segments, so go ahead and enter into that. You'll notice now that we do have 5 health on our screen at the bottom and have infinite flying ability, so we're able to hover for as long as we want to. This area is a bit difficult with so much fire, but now with the infinite fly, this is when you can really test out those flying skills, and there's some great maneuverability because of this throughout this area. Watch out for the giant skeleton dragons. There's a lot of them here, these skeleton gargoyle-like creature guys. They are, of course, quite big, but with all that extra maneuverability and speed, we're able to kind of get around them and be able to maneuver. Head on north and head inside this castle. Now, this is the final major area of the game, as we have one more area after this, but it's just the final boss. We also have the best weapon now in the game as well, but we're not going to really be using it during this segment, only during the final boss, because we still need the ability to make safe platforms for us to land on a few times throughout here. This is definitely a bit more maze-like than some other areas, and they may look like you can kind of sneak through a couple of things, but you want to make sure that the area is large enough so you can get your character all the way through without accidentally hitting spikes on the ceiling or on the floor while running into fire. Climb up here, fly across over to the left, and of course drop down to avoid spikes while doing so. Now here you can grab some health in the little corridor if you want to, but it's a bit risky because you may accidentally end up hitting the ceiling or floor while doing so. Over to the right, switch your weapon so you can destroy the wall located here and then continue on through. do a big jump just below those set of spikes and fly all the way over to the right, where you can find a little bit of safe wall space for you to land on and maneuver around all the flames that are on the ground. Start climbing up here. You can do some nicely timed jumps and actually fly all the way up. Now, of course, you could use your other projectile to make some safe spots on the wall, but if you time it right, you can actually just jump straight up, and this way you don't have to worry about changing the weapon, because we need to change it right back here in order to kind of work our way through and destroy these pieces of wall or whatever they're supposed to be. Here, change now to the one that you're allowed to make the spots on the spikes in order to boost your way up to this platform. Over to left, switch back, and destroy another column of the weird bubble-like platforms. Fly all the way over to the left, and then do a big jump so you're able to get onto this platform here. And then once here, you kind of need to maneuver a little bit more as you're jumping from platform to platform while working up. Now, for this spot here, what you're going to need to do is jump up and fly all the way left. Make sure that you have the ability to make a spot to land on. Land, then fly all the way back while watching out for the gargoyle guy. This will allow you to land on this wall and fly up. Now, there's another gargoyle guy waiting for you, but you don't have to fight him. Instead, just jump over him and head through the door. Once here, head north and talk to the guy up here and get ready for the final boss. Be sure during this conversation not to mash too much, because you have to say no when he asks you. You'll still have to fight the boss even if you say yes, but you'll have none of your power-ups if you do. Now, the final boss is extremely easy if you follow this method. Switch to the best weapon in the game, then jump on up here, and then wait for his hands to drop a little bit. Once they drop, immediately jump towards him, get close, and mash the attack button. You'll probably get hit once, but it only takes a couple of hits and he's done, and you can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Gargoyles Quest. So there you have it, Gargoyles Quest on the Nintendo Game Boy. The first of the trilogy of Gargoyles Quest, along with Gargoyles Quest 2, and of course, the awesome, amazing Demon's Crest on the Super Nintendo. After seeing the end of the game, you then get kind of the roll call of all of the bosses that we got to battle, and you kind of have all those kind of really weird, interesting names that, some of which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce throughout the course of this sequence. Gargoyles Quest is an absolutely awesome little game that I don't think a lot of people played, especially back in the day. The Gargoyles Quest series was introduced to me when I discovered Demon's Crest, and then a little bit later on I found out about Gargoyles Quest 2 actually through one of those old Nintendo password books that kind of had like secret codes and passwords in it, and it actually included Gargoyles Quest 2 in that, and that's how I found out that game existed, but didn't even know there was a Gargoyles Quest 1 until a few years later when I finally discovered the game at a local GameStop or electronics boutique and picked it up for myself, and absolutely loved the game when I got my hands on it. I like games that do combine that old school action along with kind of the overworld, a little bit of RPG elements here and there, and the gameplay in this is just so fun, especially that whole flying mechanic, and I highly recommend checking out this one and of course its sequel. Demon's Crest is an absolutely amazing game as well, but vastly different in a lot of ways from Gargoyles Quest 1 and 2. I honestly also wish Capcom had decided to continue the series in some way, shape, or form. Capcom nowadays, of course, probably not going to go back and really do anything with either Ghosts and Goblins or Gargoyles Quest, but it's one of those things that I would absolutely love if it ever happened. After the boss roll call, we have our presented by Capcom screen, and there you go, there is Gargoyles Quest. But with that, that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this horror-based Play It Through, be sure to check out some of the other ones I've done recently, including another hidden gem for the Game Boy in Kid Dracula, or the Addams Family I did on the Super Nintendo, one of my favorite underrated Super Nintendo platformers. Of course, I also need to thank all the members on my Patreon. Your guys' continued support allows me to keep doing what I'm doing, from the reviews, and of course to the Play It Throughs and even the countdowns. Thank you all so much for that continued support. I also, of course, want to thank everybody who's checked out this video, and I hope you enjoyed.